what's going on in this country is that the people are going to uprise against these people. And, I could see it when the guillotine is coming down on good old Lloyd's head. There goes God's work in the basket. This is what's going to happen. It's going to be off with their heads. And these people, when you talk about a sociopath, it's no different than what was going on during the French Revolution. We just have the kings and queens and noblemen of commerce. That's the only difference. It's the same group of characters. You know what? These people think they're privileged. They think they're better than everybody. And why shouldn't they? They are privileged. They get the grease. We get the dirt. They get the easy road in. We have to climb the ladder, and just when we get to the top, they change the deal and rob us blind. They don't care what's going on with the average people. And so that's what we're saying is that the Second American Revolution has begun. It happened with the April 15th Tea Parties and tax protests. It happened with the July 4th demonstrations. Taxation without representation was yelled all over America on the 4th of July. We saw it happen again when people went to town halls protesting big government taking over the medical industry, and then the healthcare industry. And then we saw it again when almost 1 million people marched on Washington. So we're going to see more and more of this. It's not going to stop. It's only going to get worse because they're going to continue their ways of robbing the American public.
As they steal from and loot this country and consolidate power, they blame it on capitalism and free markets instead of laying the blame on the criminal gangs and banking syndicates in order to sell socialism to the people. What are your thoughts as you see that, Gerald, as a strategy?
Well, first of all, there's nothing wrong with capitalism. This is criminal activity. Capitalism, communism, socialism, any ism, Protestantism, whatever the ism might be, Catholicism, there's nothing wrong with the systems. They're being corrupted. And so they blame it on the system. This is not capitalism. This is criminal activity, period, paragraph. And it's not socialism that America's going into. Listen to someone who knew a thing or two about it. The person that called the merger of state and corporate powers fascism. That's what Mussolini called it, the pro of fascism. That's what's happening to America. Fascism has come to America. We have the major corporations and government in bed with each other. We now own AIG, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, GMAC. You go down the line, General Motors, Citigroup. Oh, I love it, Citigroup. Yeah, there's a fine organization for you. Well, again, with the Italians, when they call it loan sharking, they charge a 12% interest on the loan, and that was loan sharking. Oh, and the attorney generals would get very high and mighty and lock up these criminals. But you could be 6 seconds late on your credit card bill, and the Citigroup mob hits you with a 30% interest rate. Oh, and what do they call it? The cost of doing business. And the government is in bed with the criminal gang is a fascist operation. They're the only ones that could get away with it. Fascism and fascists and tyrants are posing as the protectors of democracy. Orwell couldn't have painted a better picture.
Let's stick with fascism for just a minute, Gerald. As the remnants of our once great republic crumbles and we enter the twilight of what used to be, and move into the dark world of fascism and a Gestapo-type police state, and the wealthy continue to leave the country, the same as they fled Nazi Germany. What should people expect life to be like going forward in the United States, Gerald?
We're putting together, Eric, the top trends of 2010 right now. And one of them is going to be Terror 2010. Get ready for a terror attack in 2010. The United States is making the ground fertile for terror. Current events form future trends. What's going on now in Pakistan should be headline news. The United States has given them a $7.5 billion military check to go out and wage war against opponents of the United States in the Pakistani region. in South Waziristan and the Swat Valley. They're the greatest amount of people that are homeless right now, the greatest wave since Rwanda. Over 1 million people are refugees right now in that area, and that was in 1994, Rwanda, is now happening in Pakistan. The more they execute the war in Pakistan, the greater the anti-Americanism happens in there and will go worldwide. For example, with each military strike that the United States is pushing the Pakistanis to take in those areas, you read it every day, there's a retaliatory strike. They're blowing up police stations, spy agencies, courthouses, police academies, marketplaces, you name it. It's tit for tat. When they report the strikes, the counter strikes, they say militants are doing it. But of course, when the military does it, that's okay. And put this in your mind, that something is going to happen because very differently from Iraq and Afghanistan, there are over 200,000 Pakistanis that live in this country. So they already have people here. Now you put yourself in the place. You're a Pakistani, and because of American actions, your family, your relatives were all slaughtered. How would you feel about it? You think you'd want revenge? Oh, they'll call it, when they attack, they're going to say, oh, they hate our freedom and liberty. How about they hate our foreign policy, and they're getting even for the destruction that the United States is sponsoring in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iraq. So what's going to happen as we see it, we're looking for Terror 2010. And what people should be doing is preparing for the worst. It may mean, for example, it may mean closing the banks like they closed Wall Street. And if they close the banks, you won't be able to get your money out. When 9/11 happened, I went into immediate action. Google up my name, Celente, Celente, USA Today, December 14th, 2000. The headline read, 2001 won't be our year, Trendseer says. We warned that American foreign policy was not making it safe for Americans at home or abroad. The same situation exists now. So when 9/11 happened, one of the first things I did was I picked up the phone, called Fleet Bank, which is no longer there, gobbled up by it, too big to fail, and I had all my money in CDs, my company's money and my money. I wanted to transfer it to the Rhinebeck Bank because I didn't know if they were going to hit Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant, which is 45 miles north of the Twin Towers. They had just hit General Headquarters, the Pentagon. No one knew what was going to happen next. But if that happened, I wanted to get out of here because there'd be chaos like we've never seen before. Sorry, Mr. Celente, your certificates of deposit are financial instruments that are traded on Wall Street, and Wall Street's closed. And that's what's going to happen if there's another terror attack. We can't say it's definitely going to happen. We're saying a high probability given the direction of U.S. foreign policy. What if they close the banks? Oh, that'll be a great one. Don't worry, your money's guaranteed. It's insured by the FDIC. Hey, wait a minute, aren't they broke? Aren't they hitting up the banks for 3 years forward payments to cover their losses already? Oh, don't worry about it. You'll be able to get your money back. You just won't be able to get it all at once. Oh, and how about this one? They've done it before. Remember, FDR calls the Federal Emergency Banking Act. Everybody has to turn in your gold. If you don't, you go to jail. And you go to jail and you get double fined for what we find on you. And then what did they do? Well, they made you sell it back to the government for $20 an ounce. And as soon as they got all the money in, what did they do? Remember, gold and the dollar were pegged in those days. What they did was they raised the price of gold after they confiscated it all to $35 an ounce. It wasn't a deflationary period during the Great Depression. It was a devaluation of the dollar. And they're going to do it again. They're doing it now. They're devaluing the dollar every day. Gold prices are now at $1,150 an ounce. The whole world is betting against the dollar. They're either doing this because they're ignorant or because it's a plan to devalue the dollar so the rest of us little people have to pay more for everything we buy, and they pay back their big debts at dimes on the dollar by devaluing it. So it's either ignorance or it's being done intentionally. And that's what we're warning the people. Take proactive measures. Plan for the worst. If the worst doesn't happen, you can move back from that point. But if you're not prepared and terror strikes, you'll pay the consequences.
Let's stick on that point for just a minute. When you look at this move towards global governance, Gerald, and the purposeful deindustrialization of the United States and purposeful destruction of the U.S. economy to sell off the assets on the cheap, right, and consolidate power and wealth even further, should we expect to continue to see that going forward in this country?
It will continue to go forward unless the people regain their dignity, stand up, and start to speak out. And this country has a long way to go. When we look at what's happening